The dust devil twisted across the empty stretch of Texas prairie like a warning, but Dawson Xavier had long stopped heeding such signs, his eyes instead catching on something far more troubling than dancing dirt. A woman's tattered dress fluttering from the doorway of a broken stagecoach listing sideways in a ravine just off the trail to Amarillo. He pulled his horse to a halt and squinted against the late afternoon sun of June, 1876, noting how the stage sat at an unnatural angle, one wheel completely shattered, the wood frame splintered and weathered by what must have been months of exposure to the elements. No horses remained in the traces, and the whole sorry scene spoke of abandonment and disaster. But that dress, pale blue and moving in the breeze, suggested something else entirely. Dawson swung down from his saddle, his boots hitting the dry earth with a soft thud. At 27, he had seen enough of the world to approach carefully, his hand resting instinctively near his revolver. The Texas plains held all manner of dangers, from outlaws to wild animals, and a man lived longer by expecting trouble. "Hello," he called out, his voice carrying across the stillness. "Anyone there?" For a long moment, nothing answered but the wind. Then came a sound that made his chest tighten, a woman's voice, weak and hoarse. "Help, please." He scrambled down the rocky incline, loose stones skittering ahead of him. Up close, the stagecoach looked even worse, its paint peeled away by sun and sand, bullet holes pocking the sides. This had been an attack then, probably months ago. How anyone could have survived out here defied understanding. Dawson approached the open door cautiously. "Madam, I am coming to help. Do not be frightened." What he saw inside made his breath catch. A woman sat propped against the tilted interior wall, her face gaunt and pale beneath a layer of dust, her dark hair hanging in matted tangles around her shoulders. But her eyes, gray as a winter sky, held a fierce determination that spoke of strength beyond her physical state. She appeared to be perhaps 24 or 25, though hardship made age difficult to judge. "Water," she whispered. Dawson immediately retreated to his horse, retrieving his canteen and the dried meat from his saddlebag. When he returned, he helped her drink slowly, knowing too much too fast could make her sick. "Easy now," he murmured. "Small sips." She obeyed, though her hands trembled as they wrapped around the canteen. After a few moments, she seemed to gather herself, pushing the hair from her face with shaking fingers. "Thank you," she said, her voice already stronger. "I thought perhaps God had forgotten this place entirely." "How long have you been here?" "Since March. 3 months, perhaps longer. I lost count of the days." She gestured weakly to the interior of the coach. "My husband and I were traveling from San Antonio to Amarillo. We were attacked by bandits. They killed him, killed the driver and the guard, took the horses and anything of value." Dawson noticed she wore no jewelry, her dress torn and mended with rough stitches. "And you have been living here all this time?" "I was injured in the attack, could not walk far. There is a small creek about 100 yards north. I managed to reach it, fill a container, caught rain when it fell, found some wild berries, prairie turnips when I could reach them." She closed her eyes briefly. "I tried to walk for help twice. Both times I collapsed before reaching anywhere." This seemed the safest place to return to. The sheer determination required for such survival staggered him. Most people would have simply laid down and died. "What is your name?" Eleanor Kimball. "My husband was Robert." "I am Dawson Xavier. I have a ranch about 8 miles west of here. We need to get you there, get you fed and healed proper." Eleanor looked at him with those piercing gray eyes. "I have nothing to pay you with. They took everything." "I am not asking for payment, Mrs. Kimball. I am offering basic human decency." Something in her expression softened, though tears gathered in her eyes. I had nearly forgotten such a thing existed in the world. Dawson studied the stagecoach, his mind already working through possibilities. The frame, despite the damage, remained relatively sound. The Wells Fargo mark on the side indicated quality construction. An idea began forming, audacious perhaps, but practical in its way. "Can you ride a horse?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not in this condition. I can barely stand." "Then I have another notion. This coach, broken as it is, still has good bones. My ranch has tools, supplies, draft horses. If I can secure this properly, I could pull the whole thing to my property. Give you shelter on the journey, then somewhere to stay once we arrive until you are back on your feet." Eleanor stared at him as if he had suggested moving a mountain with his bare hands. "That is impossible. It must weigh over 1,000 pounds. Closer to 1,500, I reckon, but I have pulled heavier loads across these plains. The ground is dry and mostly flat between here and my place." "It could be done." He met her eyes. "And it means you would not have to move from here until we reach safety. In your condition, trying to ride would be dangerous." "Why would you do this? You do not know me." Dawson considered the question. His ranch sat on 200 acres of good grazing land, built by his own hands over 5 years of hard work. He had cattle, chickens, a solid house, and a barn. He also had a loneliness that sometimes felt like a physical weight. But that was not something to speak of to a widow still grieving. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "And because no one should be left to die alone on the prairie when help is available." She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to read his true intentions. Finally, she nodded. "Then I accept your help, Mr. Xavier, with gratitude I cannot properly express. Just Dawson is fine. Now you rest here. I need to ride to my ranch, get my draft horses and some rope and tools. I will be back before nightfall. Can you hold on a few more hours?" "I have held on for 3 months. A few more hours seems possible." A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. He left her with his canteen and most of his food, then rode hard for his ranch. The sun hung low by the time he reached his property, the house and barn casting long shadows across the yard. He had built everything himself, choosing each plank and nail with care, creating something permanent in a transient world. Dawson gathered what he needed. His 2 strongest draft horses, massive beasts with gentle temperaments, heavy rope, tools for makeshift repairs, blankets and more food, medical supplies his mother had insisted he keep. He loaded a wagon with supplies, then hitched the draft horses to it and began the journey back. The sun had just touched the horizon when he returned to find Eleanor exactly where he had left her, though she had clearly made efforts to tidy herself, smoothing her hair as best she could, brushing dust from her dress. She looked up at his approach with evident relief. "I worried I had dreamed you," she admitted. "No dream, just a stubborn rancher who does not know when something cannot be done." He grinned and was rewarded with another small smile from her. The work of preparing the stagecoach for transport took the better part of 2 hours. Dawson reinforced the weakened frame with boards from his wagon, secured the damaged wheel so it would not collapse further, and rigged an elaborate system of ropes and harnesses to distribute the weight properly. Eleanor watched from inside, occasionally offering observations that proved surprisingly useful. "You know something of engineering," he noted. "My father was a carpenter. I learned by watching him work." Sadness crossed her face. "He died 5 years ago, my mother 2 years before that. Robert was all I had left. I am sorry for your loss, and I for my rudeness in not asking about your own family." Dawson secured another knot before answering. "My parents have a farm in Missouri. I have 2 sisters, both married with children. I came to Texas to build something of my own. No wife. No, never found the right woman, and I was not willing to settle for the wrong one. He tested the rope, satisfied with its strength. I have always figured the right things come in their own time. With everything finally ready, he climbed onto the driver's bench of his wagon. The draft horses harnessed ahead with lines running back to the elaborate rigging on the stagecoach. The physics were simple enough. The horses would pull the wagon, and the wagon would pull the coach with enough distance between to prevent tangling. "Hold tight to something solid," he called to Eleanor. "This may be rough at first." He clicked his tongue, urging the horses forward. They leaned into their harnesses, muscles bunching beneath their hides. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of protesting wood and the sound of rocks grinding beneath wheels, the stagecoach lurched forward. The journey to his ranch tested every bit of Dawson's skill and patience. The broken wheel dragged and stuttered. Twice they had to stop to adjust the rigging when ropes began to fray. The draft horses, bless them, proved their worth, plodding steadily onward even when the load behind them fought every inch of progress. Dawson walked alongside much of the way, watching the stagecoach, calling encouragement to the horses, and checking on Eleanor every 15 minutes. She bore the jostling journey with remarkable fortitude, though he could see the pain it cost her in the tight lines around her mouth. The moon had risen high by the time his ranch came into view, a welcome sight that made his shoulders relax. He guided the horses to a spot near the barn where the ground was level and relatively smooth, then carefully brought the stagecoach to rest. When he opened the door to help Eleanor out, he found her pale and trembling but conscious. "We made it," he said softly. "So we did." Her attempt to step down resulted in her legs buckling, but he caught her easily, lifting her into his arms. She weighed far too little, her body frail from months of inadequate food. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "Perhaps tomorrow. Tonight you are going to eat a proper meal, have a bath if you are up to it, and sleep in a real bed." He carried her into the house, shouldering open the door to reveal the interior he had built with such care. The main room held a large stone fireplace, a solid table with 4 chairs, shelves lined with books, and comfortable furniture arranged for both practicality and warmth. A smaller room off to the side served as his bedroom, while a ladder led to a loft he had built for storage and future expansion. Dawson settled Eleanor into a chair near the fireplace, then set about building a fire and preparing food. He kept his pantry well stocked, and soon had beans warming with salt pork, cornbread heating, and coffee brewing. The domestic routine felt different with someone to share it, the house somehow more alive with her presence. Eleanor watched him work, her expression difficult to read. When he finally placed a plate before her, she stared at it as if it were a miracle. "Eat slowly," he cautioned. "Your stomach needs to remember what real food feels like." She obeyed, taking small bites, though he could see the effort it took not to devour everything immediately. Between bites, she glanced around the room, taking in details. "You built all this yourself, most of it. Had help with the barn raising and some of the heavier beams, but the design and most of the construction, yes. It is beautiful, solid, made to last. That was the idea. I wanted something permanent, something that would stand against whatever the world threw at it." He poured coffee for them both. "Too many things in life prove temporary. I wanted to build something different." Eleanor sipped her coffee, closing her eyes briefly in what looked like bliss. I had forgotten how good simple things could taste. They ate in companionable silence, the crackling fire filling the quiet. When Eleanor finally pushed her plate away, having eaten perhaps half of what he had given her, she looked more alert than she had since he found her. "You mentioned a bath," she said hesitantly. "I fear I must look and smell dreadful." I will heat water. The tub is small but serviceable. There is a screen you can set up for privacy in the corner there. It took 30 minutes to heat enough water, hauling it in from the well and warming it over the fire. He set up the copper tub behind a wooden screen, leaving soap and clean towels within reach. He also laid out one of his own shirts, knowing it would be far too large for her but cleaner than her tattered dress. "Call if you need anything," he said, then retreated to give her privacy. While she bathed, he busied himself outside, tending to the horses and checking on his small herd of cattle in the near pasture. The night air felt cool and clean, stars spreading across the sky in a brilliant cascade. He found himself thinking about the woman in his house, about the strength it must have taken to survive what she had endured. When he returned, he found Eleanor seated by the fire again, wrapped in a blanket, her hair damp and combed through. She had indeed put on his shirt, which hung to her knees like a dress. Even exhausted and gaunt, there was a loveliness to her features that the dirt had hidden. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this. I do not know how I will ever repay such kindness." "There is nothing to repay. You will stay here until you are well, and then we will figure out what comes next." He settled into the chair across from her. "The bedroom is yours. I will sleep in the loft. I cannot take your bed. You can and will. It is not open for debate, Mrs. Kimball." Her lips quirked. "You are a very stubborn man, Dawson Xavier." "So I have been told, usually right before I prove everyone wrong about what can or cannot be done." Despite her obvious exhaustion, Eleanor seemed reluctant to end the conversation. "You pulled a stagecoach 8 miles across the prairie tonight. I think you have earned the right to your stubbornness. And you survived 3 months alone with injuries and minimal supplies. I think we are both rather stubborn." She laughed then, a soft sound that seemed to surprise her as much as it pleased him. "Perhaps we are." He showed her to the bedroom, making sure she had everything she needed. "If you require anything in the night, just call. I am a light sleeper." "Dawson," she paused in the doorway, looking back at him. "Why did you really do all this? The truth?" He considered his answer carefully. "Because 5 years ago, I came to Texas with nothing but a horse and a dream. A rancher named Samuel Hicks found me half-starved on his property. He gave me work, taught me about cattle and land management, helped me save enough to buy this place. He told me that kindness is not a debt to be repaid to the giver, but to be passed forward to others in need. I suppose I am passing it forward." Eleanor's eyes shimmered with tears. "Then Samuel Hicks was a wise man, and you are a worthy student of his teachings." After she closed the door, Dawson climbed to the loft, laying out his bedroll on the sturdy boards. Sleep came slowly, his mind turning over the day's extraordinary events. He had left that morning expecting nothing more than a routine ride to check fence lines. He returned with a broken stagecoach and a widow whose gray eyes held storms and strength in equal measure. The next days fell into a rhythm. Eleanor remained weak, but with proper food and rest, color slowly returned to her cheeks. Dawson tended his ranch during the day, checking on her frequently. She proved to be an easy guest, uncomplaining and genuinely interested in his work. On the 3rd day, he found her standing outside, leaning heavily on a walking stick he had fashioned for her, staring at the stagecoach where it sat near the barn. "It looks even more pathetic in full daylight," she observed. "I have been thinking about that." Dawson moved to stand beside her. "The frame is solid. With proper tools and materials, it could be repaired, made into something useful. Useful how? Storage, perhaps, or living quarters if properly reinforced and weatherproofed. Windows replaced, a small stove installed." He warmed to the idea as he spoke. "It could be quite comfortable, actually. Better than it sitting there as a reminder of bad times." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Robert and I had such plans. We were going to start a new life in Amarillo. He had a job waiting, clerking for a land office. We were going to save money, eventually buy a small house. Her voice remained steady, but sadness colored every word. 3 months in that coach, I hated it. It was a prison, a tomb, but it also kept me alive. Then perhaps it deserves a better purpose than slowly rotting in my yard. She turned to look at him, something shifting in her expression. You are serious about repairing it. I am, if you have no objection. Why would I object to you improving your own property? Dawson chose his words carefully. Because it is part of your story. I would not want to cause pain by changing it without your blessing. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You are an uncommonly thoughtful man, Dawson Xavier. Yes, you have my blessing. I think I would like to see it become something better than it was. The project began the following day. Dawson threw himself into it with the same determination he applied to everything, working in the early mornings and evenings when ranch duties allowed. Eleanor, growing stronger daily, began to help where she could, holding boards steady, passing tools, offering suggestions that proved her earlier claim about learning carpentry from her father. Working side by side created an easy companionship. They talked about everything and nothing. His dreams for expanding the ranch, her memories of growing up in Louisiana, favorite books, terrible meals they had endured, the peculiar beauty of Texas sunsets. You know, Eleanor said one evening as they worked on replacing a rotted section of floor, I thought I understood loneliness after my parents died, but these months alone taught me there are depths to isolation I never imagined. Dawson paused his hammering. I know something of that. This land, beautiful as it is, can feel mighty empty sometimes. Yet you chose it. I did. The solitude seemed preferable to settling for a life that did not fit. He met her eyes. But I will not lie and say it has always been easy. She nodded slowly. Robert was a good man. Kind, responsible, everything a husband should be. I cared for him deeply. But I did not love him the way poets write about, the way my mother spoke of loving my father. We were companions, partners. It seemed enough at the time. She smoothed her hand over the new plank. Is it terrible that I mourn him more as a friend than a husband? I think it is honest. And honesty is never terrible. They worked in silence for a while after that, but it felt comfortable, the quiet of two people at ease with each other. As June turned to July, the Stagecoach transformation continued. Dawson replaced all 4 wheels, reinforced the frame, installed proper windows with glass he purchased in Amarillo on a supply run. He built a small sleeping platform inside, added shelving, and installed a compact wood stove with a stovepipe that vented through the roof. Eleanor sewed curtains from fabric he brought back, her skilled fingers creating something cheerful and bright. Eleanor herself continued to recover, filling out as regular meals did their work, her strength returning until she could walk without the stick, could help with cooking and household chores, could ride the gentle mare Dawson kept for emergencies. She proved to be capable and hardworking, taking on tasks without being asked, bringing an organizational efficiency to his household that improved everything. But more than that, she brought life to the ranch. Her laughter at his terrible jokes, her singing while she worked, her passionate debates about the books they both read in the evenings, all of it transformed his solitary existence into something richer. Dawson found himself watching for her smile, listening for her voice, treasuring the moments when their hands would brush accidentally or when she would look at him with those storm-gray eyes and really see him. It terrified him, this growing feeling, because Eleanor had suffered so much loss. The last thing she needed was him complicating her recovery with unwanted affection. So he kept his feelings private, content to simply enjoy her presence, to treasure this unexpected friendship that had blossomed between them. In mid-July, nearly 2 months after he found her, Eleanor declared the Stagecoach complete. They stood back to admire it together, and indeed, it bore little resemblance to the broken wreck he had pulled across the prairie. Now it gleamed with fresh paint, windows sparkled in the sunlight, cheerful curtains framed the openings, and the whole structure sat level on new wheels. "It looks almost cheerful," Eleanor said wonderingly, "like something from a storybook. You did most of the finishing work. The painting, the curtains, all those touches that made it warm. We did it together." She turned to him, just as we seem to do most things these days. There was something in her tone that made his heart beat faster. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something, and I am not sure how to say it properly." She took a breath, clasping her hands together. "I have been thinking about my future, about what comes next for me." Dawson's chest tightened. Of course she had been thinking about leaving. She was well now, strong again. There was nothing to keep her here except his unspoken hopes. "You want to continue to Amarillo, make a life there as you planned." "No, that was Robert's dream, not mine. I went along because it seemed like what I should do, but I never truly wanted it." She met his eyes. "I have been happier these past 2 months, even while recovering from ordeal and loss, than I was in the entire year of my marriage. Do you know why?" He could not speak, could only shake his head. "Because I have been myself, truly myself, for perhaps the first time in my life. Working with my hands, speaking my mind, making decisions, being valued for my thoughts and my abilities." She stepped closer to him. "And because I have been here with you, building something together. Eleanor, you do not have to say this because you feel obligated." "Obligated?" She laughed, though tears sparkled in her eyes. "Dawson, I am trying very badly to tell you that I have fallen in love with you, completely and entirely in love with you in the way poets write about and my mother spoke of. You are the first thing I think of when I wake and the last before I sleep. Your kindness, your strength, your terrible jokes, the way you care for your animals, the gentleness in your hands when you work, all of it. I love all of it. I love you." The world seemed to stop, balanced on the edge of her words. Dawson reached for her, cupping her face in his hands, seeing his own feelings reflected back in her eyes. "I have been in love with you since the second week you were here," he admitted. "Watching you fight your way back to health with the same determination you showed surviving in that coach, seeing your smile return, hearing you laugh. I fell so hard and so fast it scared me. I thought it was too soon, that you needed time." "I needed you," she said simply. "You fixed more than would these past months, Dawson. You fixed something broken in me I did not even know needed mending. You showed me what it meant to truly share a life with someone, to work together toward common goals, to respect and value each other." He kissed her then, softly at first, then with all the pent-up longing of the past weeks. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck, her body pressed against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the world seemed brighter. "Marry me," he said. "Not because you need protection or shelter, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it, because you make everything better and brighter, because I love you beyond reason." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married 2 weeks later in Amarillo, in a small church with a handful of witnesses Dawson knew from town. Eleanor wore a simple dress of pale blue, the color of the sky after a storm, and carried wildflowers he had picked that morning. She had never looked more beautiful. The preacher, a kind man named Reverend Matthews, spoke of second chances and new beginnings, of God's grace in bringing 2 souls together. When Dawson slid his mother's ring onto Eleanor's finger, a gold band he had written to request from Missouri. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "With this ring," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I promise to love you, honor you, and stand beside you through whatever comes. You are my heart, Eleanor." "And you are mine," she replied. "My love, my partner, my home." Their kiss sealed vows that needed no elaborate words. Love that required no grand gestures beyond the simple truth of two hearts choosing each other. They returned to the ranch as husband and wife. And that night, Eleanor finally moved her belongings from the bedroom to the loft, which Dawson had spent the past week transforming into a proper bedroom for them both. He had built a large bed frame, commissioned a mattress from the general store, installed a window that looked out over the prairie, and added small touches he hoped would make her happy. When she saw it, she turned to him with shining eyes. "You did all this." "I wanted our first night as husband and wife to be special, to have a space that was ours, not just mine that you moved into." Eleanor kissed him deeply. "It is perfect. You are perfect. Hardly perfect. Just a man who loves you more than words can say." Their wedding night proved tender and passionate, a celebration of love and trust, of two people choosing to give themselves completely to each other. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, Eleanor traced idle patterns on his skin. "I never knew it could be like this," she said softly. "So consuming and yet so right." Dawson kissed the top of her head. "Neither did I. I think we were both waiting for each other, even before we knew it." Life settled into a new rhythm after that, one built on partnership and love. Eleanor proved invaluable to the ranch, her organizational skills and hard work complementing his own strengths. Together they expanded the vegetable garden, added more chickens, brought in additional cattle. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. The Stagecoach became a cherished part of the property, serving as extra storage and sometimes as a playhouse when neighbors visited with children. But its real value lay in what it represented. The journey that had brought them together, the work they had done side by side, the transformation of something broken into something whole. In October, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. She told Dawson one evening after supper, her eyes bright with joy and a hint of nervousness. "I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." Dawson swept her into his arms, laughing and crying at once. "A baby! We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" she asked. "Truly happy." "Happier than I knew was possible. You have given me everything, Eleanor. A home filled with love, a partner who makes me better, and now a child. How could I be anything but overjoyed?" The pregnancy progressed smoothly, Eleanor blooming with health and happiness. Dawson treated her like precious glass, fussing over her in ways that made her laugh even as she protested his hovering. "I am pregnant, not dying," she would say, swatting his hands away when he tried to prevent her from doing perfectly ordinary tasks. "I know. But you are carrying my child, and I will take care of you both whether you like it or not." In truth, she did not mind his attention, basking in the love and care he showered on her. They spent long evenings planning for the baby, building a cradle together, sewing tiny clothes, imagining what their child might be like. "Boy or girl, I do not care," Dawson said one night, his hand resting on her swollen belly. "As long as they have your strength and your smile." "And your kindness and your heart," Eleanor countered. "Those are the things that truly matter." In late May of 1877, almost exactly 1 year after Dawson had found her in that broken stagecoach, Eleanor went into labor. Dawson rode like mad to fetch the midwife from the nearest neighboring ranch, then spent the long hours of labor pacing and praying, feeling utterly helpless in the face of his wife's pain. When the baby's first cry finally rang out, he nearly collapsed with relief. The midwife emerged with a smile, beckoning him inside. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy, beautiful boy." Dawson entered to find Eleanor propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. She looked up at him with so much love it stole his breath. "Meet our son," she said softly. He approached reverently, looking down at the impossibly small face, the tiny fists waving in the air, the dark hair already thick on the baby's head. Love hit him like a physical force, overwhelming and absolute. "He is perfect," Dawson whispered. "Just perfect." They named him Samuel, after the rancher who had helped Dawson, with the middle name of Robert, honoring Eleanor's first husband. It felt right, acknowledging the kindness that had led them to each other and the loss that had shaped Eleanor's path. Samuel proved to be a content baby, healthy and strong. Watching Eleanor with their son filled Dawson with a happiness he had never imagined possible. She was a natural mother, patient and loving, singing the same songs her own mother had sung to her. The ranch continued to thrive. By the time Samuel was 2, they had built additions to the house, expanded their herd significantly, and established themselves as respected members of the community. The stagecoach still sat near the barn, now faded again by sun and weather, a testament to where their story had begun. In the summer of 1879, Eleanor became pregnant again. This time she carried twins, which the midwife discovered to everyone's surprise during an examination. The pregnancy proved more difficult and Dawson worried constantly, though Eleanor remained calm. "We will be fine," she assured him. "All 3 of us. I can feel it." She was right. In March of 1880, she delivered 2 healthy babies, a girl they named Grace and another boy they named David. The household erupted into joyful chaos, 3 children under 3 years old keeping both parents constantly busy. But they managed, working as the team they had always been, supporting and loving each other through sleepless nights and endless demands. Samuel proved a gentle older brother, fascinated by the babies, always wanting to help. Years passed in a blur of love and work and growth. The children thrived, growing tall and strong. Samuel showed an aptitude for ranching, David for carpentry like his maternal grandfather, and Grace for anything involving horses. They attended the small school that had been established in Amarillo, making friends, bringing home stories and laughter. Eleanor and Dawson grew deeper in love with each passing year, their bond strengthened by shared challenges and triumphs. They still worked side by side, still talked long into the night, still looked at each other with the wonder of people who knew how rare and precious their connection was. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Dawson led Eleanor out to the old stagecoach. The children were spending the night at a neighbor's ranch, giving them rare time alone. He had spent the past week secretly working on the coach, restoring it once more. When Eleanor saw it, she gasped. He had repainted it, replaced the curtains with fabric matching their wedding colors, and installed a small bench inside along with lanterns that cast a warm glow. "Dawson, it is beautiful, just like I remember from when we first finished it. I thought it deserved to be honored." This is where our story began, in a way, you living in it, me pulling it home, us fixing it together. He took her hands. 10 years ago, I found a woman who changed my entire world, who took a lonely ranch and made it a home, who gave me love and partnership and 3 amazing children, who makes every single day an adventure. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. And I found a man who saved my life in every way a person can be saved, who showed me what real love looks like, who built a life with me that surpasses anything I could have dreamed. They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the land stretching endlessly around them. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the lowing of cattle and the distant laughter of their children playing at the neighbor's ranch. You ever regret it? Dawson asked. The life you might have had if things had been different. Eleanor turned to face him fully, cupping his face in her hands. Not for one single moment. Every hardship, every loss, every difficulty led me to you, led me to this life, these children, this love. How could I regret the path that brought me home? He kissed her then, tender and deep, a kiss that spoke of 10 years together and a lifetime still ahead. When they parted, both were smiling. Come on, Eleanor said, tugging him toward the house. We have a rare evening alone. Let us not waste it standing outside. They walked hand in hand, the stagecoach at their backs, the house ahead warm with lamplight and welcome. Behind them, the old coach stood as it had for over a decade, a monument to second chances and the power of two people choosing to build something beautiful from broken pieces. The years continued their march. Samuel grew into a young man of 20, taking on more responsibility for the ranch, courting a nice girl from town. David, at 18, apprenticed with a master carpenter in Amarillo, his skills surpassing anything his grandfather might have taught him. Grace, just turned 16, showed no interest in traditional feminine pursuits, preferring to work with the horses and dream of breeding the finest stock in Texas. Dawson and Eleanor, now in their late 40s, watched their children with pride and contentment. The ranch had grown to 400 acres, prosperous and well managed. They had weathered droughts and harsh winters, market fluctuations and the occasional crisis, but they had weathered it all together. On a warm evening in June of 1897, the family gathered for supper at the big table Dawson had built when the children were small. It had been expanded twice now, able to seat not just the immediate family, but also Samuel's sweetheart, Mary, and her parents who had been invited. After the meal, as the adults lingered over coffee and the younger people walked outside to enjoy the sunset, Samuel cleared his throat nervously. Father, Mother, I have something to ask. He glanced at Mary, who nodded encouragingly. Mary and I have been courting for 2 years now. I love her, and she loves me. I would like your blessing to ask for her hand in marriage. Eleanor reached across the table to squeeze her son's hand. You have had our blessing since the day you brought her home to meet us. She is a wonderful woman, and we would be honored to welcome her into our family. Dawson nodded his agreement. Your mother speaks for both of us. When are you thinking of asking her father? Tonight, actually. That is why I invited them to supper. The proposal went smoothly, Mary's father giving his consent with barely suppressed delight. The young couple would marry in the fall, after harvest, and build a house on the far section of the ranch where Samuel had already been planning and preparing. Later, after everyone had gone and the house had quieted, Dawson and Eleanor sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. Her head rested on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, a position they had assumed thousands of times over the years. Our baby is getting married, Eleanor said softly. When did he grow up? Same time we did, I suppose, though I still feel like that young man who pulled a broken stagecoach across the prairie, hoping he was doing the right thing. Eleanor laughed. And I still feel like the woman who could not believe anyone would go to such lengths for a stranger, though you stopped being a stranger very quickly. The moment I saw you, something in me knew. I did not understand it then, but I knew you were going to change everything. We changed everything together. She tilted her head to look at him. Do you know what I treasure most about our life? What? That we built it ourselves, piece by piece, choice by choice. Nothing was handed to us. We worked for every acre, every board in this house, every moment of happiness. It makes it all mean more somehow. Dawson kissed her temple. We still have years ahead of us, you know, grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch, more life to live. I am counting on it. I want to grow old with you, Dawson Xavier. I want to sit on this porch when we are ancient and gray, watching our grandchildren play where our children played, remembering how it all began. With a broken stagecoach and a desperate woman. With a kind man and impossible rescue, she smiled. Both are true. They sat in comfortable silence, the night settling around them. From somewhere in the distance came the call of a coyote, answered by another. The wind rustled through the grass with its eternal whisper. A light still burned in the barn where David was working late on a special project, and the house behind them held decades of memories in every corner. The old stagecoach, barely visible in the darkness, remained where it had always been, a silent witness to the life that had grown around it. Tomorrow, Eleanor would probably hang laundry on the line strung near it. Samuel might store some tools inside. Grace would certainly perch on its roof to watch the sunrise as she often did. But tonight it simply existed, a reminder of endings and beginnings, of loss and love, of two people who had taken broken pieces and created something whole and beautiful and lasting. I love you, Dawson said into the quiet. And I love you, Eleanor replied. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after. They remained on the porch until the moon rose high, talking and dreaming, planning and remembering, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a life that would echo through generations. Samuel married Mary in October, a beautiful ceremony that brought tears to Eleanor's eyes and pride to Dawson's. The young couple settled into their house, and by the following summer, Eleanor and Dawson became grandparents to a baby girl named Eleanor Rose, called Ellie. Holding his granddaughter for the first time, Dawson marveled at the circle of life, at how that desperate decision to help a stranger had led to this. A family, a legacy, a love that would continue long after he was gone. David eventually married as well, to a spirited woman named Catherine who matched his quiet intensity with her own fierce passion. They settled in Amarillo, where his carpentry business thrived, though they visited the ranch frequently. Grace, true to her independent nature, took longer to settle, finally marrying at 25 to a horse breeder who shared her passion and respected her knowledge. As the new century approached, Dawson and Eleanor found themselves surrounded by children and grandchildren, the ranch alive with multiple generations. They had slowed down some, letting Samuel take over most of the day-to-day operations, but they remained active and engaged. On a summer morning in 1905, Dawson woke to find Eleanor already up, standing at the window looking out over the land. At 54, she remained beautiful to him, her hair now streaked with silver, lines at her eyes and mouth that spoke of years of smiling. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her at the window. "Everything. Nothing. How strange and wonderful life is." She leaned against him. "Do you remember the day you found me? Every detail. The dust devil, the blue dress in the wind, your voice asking for help. I remember thinking you had the most extraordinary eyes. I remember thinking you must be an angel or a madman, talking about pulling that coach to your ranch." She laughed softly. "Turns out you were neither. Just a good man with a stubborn streak and a kind heart. Just a man who stumbled onto the greatest treasure of his life and had sense enough to recognize it." They stood together watching the sunrise paint the land in gold and amber, the same land they had worked for nearly 30 years, that had supported their children and now their grandchildren. The old stagecoach still stood near the barn, ancient now, weathered to gray but still sturdy. They kept it maintained out of sentiment, out of respect for what it represented. "I have been thinking," Eleanor said. "We should tell the story properly, write it down for the grandchildren. How we met, how you pulled that coach across the prairie, how we fell in love fixing it together. They should know where this family really began." That is a fine idea, though I think you should be the one to write it. You have always been better with words. We will write it together. The way we do everything. And they did, spending the long evenings of that summer composing the story of their beginning, arguing good-naturedly over details, laughing at memories, marveling at how far they had come. When it was finished, Eleanor copied it in her careful handwriting into a leather journal Dawson had purchased for the purpose. On the final page, she wrote, "To our children and grandchildren and all who come after. May you be blessed with a love that heals, a partnership that strengthens, and the courage to choose each other every single day. May you remember that broken things can be mended, that second chances are gifts beyond price, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with simple acts of kindness. With all our love, Eleanor and Dawson Xavier." Years continued to pass, measured in seasons and celebrations, in births and occasional losses, in the steady rhythm of life lived well and fully. Dawson and Eleanor aged gracefully together, their love deepening with time, their partnership as strong in their 70s as it had been in their 20s. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1927, surrounded by 3 children, 12 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. The party sprawled across the ranch yard, multiple generations mingling, sharing food and stories and laughter. Samuel, now a grandfather himself, stood to offer a toast. "To my parents, who taught us all what real love looks like. Who showed us that family is built on respect and partnership, on working together through good times and bad. Who created not just a ranch, but a legacy of love that will continue for generations. Thank you for everything." Dawson and Eleanor sat together at the head of the long tables, holding hands, eyes bright with happy tears. They had lived long enough to see their family flourish, to know that what they had built would endure. Late that evening, after everyone had left or settled for the night in various corners of the house and barn, Dawson and Eleanor walked out to the Stagecoach one last time. It had been fully restored for the anniversary, painted and polished, looking almost as it had when they first completed the work together. 50 years, Eleanor said wonderingly. Half a century since you found me. Best decision I ever made, stopping to investigate that blue dress fluttering in the wind. Best thing that ever happened to me, seeing you climb down that ravine. She looked at the coach, then at the land around them, finally at the man she had loved for 5 decades. We had a good life, did we not? The best life. The only life I ever wanted. He pulled her close. And I would do it all again, every moment, every challenge, every joy, all of it to end up right here with you. They kissed in the moonlight. 2 people who had chosen each other and kept choosing each other through everything life had thrown their way. Around them, the ranch settled into sleep, multiple generations under one roof, a family built on love and determination and the willingness of 2 people to mend more than just broken wood. The Stagecoach stood silent in the darkness, its work complete, its purpose fulfilled. It had been a prison and a salvation, a home and a project, a symbol and a reality. But most of all, it had been the beginning of a love story that would be told and retold for generations. A reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the simplest acts of human kindness. Dawson and Eleanor walked back to the house hand in hand, their steps slower than they once were, but their connection as strong as ever. Behind them, the Stagecoach remained, a monument to second chances, to love that heals, to the power of 2 people choosing to build something beautiful from broken pieces. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the Texas prairie, it would shine on a family, a legacy, and a love that had transformed a broken stagecoach and 2 wounded souls into something whole and lasting and true. a testament to the enduring power of kindness, determination, and the courage to choose love even in the hardest of circumstances.